the sixth petition. So, what kind of temptations are there? My goodness, we can probably make quite a list if we step down. But think of general categories. Okay, think of general categories. Okay, other people. What about other people? Other people themselves are not temptations, but what?
They do what they want you to do with them.
Okay, so other people can tempt you. Okay, I'm thinking of the temptations themselves.
To do other things rather than worship on Sunday.
Okay, yeah, okay. So a temptation to do something other than worship on Sunday. All right, very good. That's a whole category. I mean, you could put down sports, you could put down family, you could put down job, you could put down all kinds of things as far as the actual temptations. But as a general category, that's a pretty big one. Yeah. What's another one?
Well, it's not only on Sunday, it's forgetting about the Lord every day.
Well, yeah, sure. That's true. Yeah, that's even better. Right. Not remembering to pray, not remembering to read some scripture, hopefully every day, that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. What else? What other kind of general categories of temptation are there out there that we have to watch out for? Certainly when you talked about other people, well, other people, what they do to us, of course, it's a temptation to anger, I guess, huh? Temptation to revenge, temptation to hate, yeah, bigotry, prejudice, lust, good, okay, so people can be the source of temptations, that's true. How about something else? What other category is there that's a common source or a common way of temptation these days?
Things.
Okay, materialism, all right. Houses, cars, clothes, money, okay, land,
TVs,
huh?
giant TVs.
Giant TVs. The one that gets me most, I guess it's because I'm a farmer. And on the ranch, we never had, Dad, when he bought pickup trucks, he just bought the simplest, cheapest pickup truck he could find because we just beat the ever-living snot out of them, They were all 4 on the floors or 3 on the tree, and no air conditioning, no radios, no nothing, right? And those were good farm trucks. And when he got a tractor, he only got as much horsepower as he needed. And in the groves, you don't need a whole lot of horsepower. You just need to be able to get where you're going. But you know what really bothers me is pulling up to a stop sign and have some guy pull up next to me on a truck with the first step is here, and it's got every doodad and hoohickey in the whole world on it, and it's all full of chrome and bright shiny and his big diesel blah 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 blah, and this guy sits way up there, and everything like that, and I bet you he probably lives in an apartment.
Walmart parking lot.
Yeah, and that just, what's that?
I seen one this past week, Walmart's parking lot, and that thing had cost over 80 grand.
Oh, easy, yeah. 50, 60, 70, yeah.
After you would be a big burly guy come out
Yeah.
to get in it.
Yeah.
Now it's a 5-foot tall woman come out.
Yeah. Yeah, and she climbs in like she's climbing into a semi.
She had to push a button to get the door to pop.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Reach in and pull out a step stool.
Step stool, yeah. I just don't get it, I just don't. I don't think people ought to. I think you ought to be able. You ought to prove. You ought to show up to the dealer with mud on your boots and probably a little manure in order to buy one of those. I really do, but I'm sorry, that's just not the way it works. So.
You're talking about, you ain't gonna find it.
Well, no, not anymore. No. They don't. I remember when we bought our last batch of those, because he'd buy 5, 6 at a time. And the poor guy, we went in and talked to the Ford dealer, and we said, well, you need another 5 or 6 pickups for the ranch. And he said, well, you want what you had last time? I said, well, yeah, absolutely. And he said, sorry, they don't make them anymore. He said, we'd have to bring them in and then strip them. and take all the radios and the air conditioning and everything like that out of them, you know. And that costs you more than if you just bought them, you know, the best you could, you know. But boy, so he passed them out. Sure enough, he got 6 of them, and he passed them out. But he told, I remember him on the radio. He got on the radio and he's speaking Spanish. I had to have it translated, but he's speaking Spanish to everybody. And he's telling the ditch runners, he's saying, I ever see any one of you with the window rolled up and the air conditioning on them will fire you. If I ever hear anything on that radio, I'm going to fire you too. But we all had little transistor radios, because I drove the ranch Jeep, and it had nothing in it. But anyway, it had little transistor radios hanging from a strap on the rear view mirror. Yeah, and that's what we all had. And we'd see the old man coming, we'd take it down real quick, stick it in the glove compartment, because he was something on that. You were going to say?
Well, you usually don't see the old guys doing this.
No.
It's the kids.
It's the kids, yeah.
And you know, to be honest, we all went through some of this, unless we're,
I suppose, yeah, I suppose.
you know, it's a big deal.
So there's a lot of temptations out there that we can ask God to keep away from us. That's a petition that needs to be maybe repeated 2 or 3 times in the same prayer. How is God involved in these temptations? You know, the Bible says God tempts nobody, so He does not directly tempt anybody. But what could you say when it comes to God and temptations?
He allows.
Certainly, He allows them. Otherwise, He put a bubble around every one of us and we would never be tempted by nothing. So He allows the devil to tempt us, or He allows ourselves simply to be tempted. What does God bring into believers' lives that often seems like a temptation? What one aspect in particular that God allows into our lives really often tempts us to be ungrateful, unhappy, bitter, angry?
Too much money.
Okay, He can do that. That's true. Yeah. What does God allow into our lives very often that causes us anger, bitterness, dissatisfaction, discontentment?
Envy of others.
Okay, envy, money, what?
We don't get our way.
We don't get our way. I'm thinking of something else. Okay. Well, loss of a loved one, and I would include with that any kind of pain, illness, misfortune, tragedy of some kind, you know, busting our leg on something, you know, or getting a disease like cancer or something like that. He allows that to come, and that sometimes causes, I've seen that cause a lot of people to abandon their faith even. You know, just, well, if God's going to do this to me, you know, and that always is kind of weird. You know, you've heard that phrase, cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yeah.
Well, that's really what that is. I mean, you know, you think you're doing God a big disservice, like it's going to really offend and insult Him, you know, and it's going to just make Him bow down and cry or something. No. You know, you shake your fist at Him and say, okay, I'd rather go to hell than be with you. Go right ahead, friend. You know, that's your choice. It's not gonna ruin His day. Sorry. I mean, I know that sounds kind of cold to say that, but that's a fact. It's not gonna ruin His day. All right? And so to do that kind of thing, and to get mad at God and therefore, you know, curse Him and you know, say, I'm not a believer anymore, that's just really foolish. What 3 entities in the universe bring us evil temptations? There's 3 entities in the universe. One of them is kind of not very individual, or it's not, I hate to call it an entity, but it is. I mean, yeah, the devil is one, obviously. Yeah, and the world in our flesh, right. Okay, so our own old Adam, okay, the old Adam that we still have, we will have until we get buried, okay, until we die, that brings us a lot of temptation. The devil brings us a lot of temptation. And the world. Now, of course, the world is not a person, but the world, when the Bible talks about the world, the devil, and the flesh, it's talking about culture, it's talking about society, it's kind of taking all your friends, your enemies, your job, it's taking all the things of the world and kind of putting them all into one big pocket, and I think really in our society, in our day today, that is probably number one. Why? Well, I don't know. We don't know what kind of things come directly from the devil. Okay, we can't really tell. Okay, we can guess perhaps how much comes out of ourselves, but I think a lot of that comes out of ourselves is fed by the society around us. Okay, the way that the society thinks. Right? A lot of our members, and I don't mean our particular members, but a lot of members, one of the things I found out in talking to many other pastors, a lot of our younger members, so young people, okay, they can't bring themselves to condemn like something like same-sex marriage, okay, or homosexuality, because a lot of their friends are homosexuals. Maybe the people they work with, maybe their best friends even. and they just can't bring themselves to condemn it. And so society and the acceptance of society has caused them to kind of put that aside as something against God's will. And they'll even argue about it. And they'll even, oh no, that can't be against God's will, for this reason or that reason. And so that's society. That brings a certain temptation to us for us to, just set aside God's will and, oh, well, that's the way the world is, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to say anything about it. And so we're tempted to go along. We're tempted to agree with culture, with our society on things we shouldn't agree on, things that we should stand up and say, no, that's wrong. But we're tempted to keep our mouth shut and kind of back off in the corner because, so many people are of the opposite opinion. Yeah.
Well, they tell a lot of the young people in that, well, just let them have their opinion.
Right.
If you're
well, yeah,
wrong,
sure.
you're wrong if you warn it.
Yeah, and I think we older people, we know what happens. We know what happens when somebody says, well, let's just give them equal time. Okay? You can have your view and I'll have my view. We'll have equal time. Okay? It never stays that way. Never stays that way. Okay? Because then your viewpoint is seen as wrong and bad. Okay? And then, well, they have to put it down then. Okay? And so they're not equal anymore. Okay? It's not just, okay, I think you're wrong, you think I'm wrong. No, you may think I'm wrong, but you're really wrong. That's the way it turns out to be. And then pretty soon you're silent. You're to be silent. You're not allowed to speak. Okay? There was a county supervisor meeting over in San Diego last week, and a guy got up to the microphone and he was really angry about a bunch of stuff. And man, oh man, he started just sounding off, and I mean every other word was a swear word, and every other word was this guy was a crook and that guy's bad, and some denigrating words about various minorities. He's using words that nowadays are not considered acceptable, right? And man alive, after he was done, and next day and after that, everybody in the newspaper and all the journalists and the TV reporters and everybody, oh, we ought to put a stop to that. We can't have that no more. And sure enough, was it Thursday? I think Thursday or Friday, the supervisors met again, and they passed a rule saying, you're not allowed to say any of those things. And I thought to myself, well, whatever happened to free speech? Whatever happened to, I can disagree with everything word you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Whatever happened to that? Whatever happened to, okay, you're vulgar and disgusting and nobody's going to pay any attention to you, but go ahead and spout your stuff anyway. Whatever happened to that? That's not a good thing. I mean, I'm not saying that you should be vulgar and disgusting and bigoted and prejudiced and everything. I'm not saying that. But free speech, if free speech isn't free, what is it? I mean, if you can't say anything you want to say, and I'm not talking about yelling fire in a theater, of course, that's a dumb, okay? I'm talking about just speaking your mind. Just stand up in front of a group of people and saying, this is what I think. If you can't do that, no, I just, it's like I'm as patriotic as the next guy, but you're going to start outlawing flag burning. You're going down a road I don't think you really want to go down, because pretty soon they're going to put a law against something you want to do. That's the way that works, folks. Once you start censoring things, it comes back to bite you in the butt. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think it's gotten to a point where if you're not liberal enough, if you're too conservative,
Yeah. Well, sure, they'll find a way to shut you down.
be shut down.
Exactly.
You gotta be liberal.
Exactly.
And
So these are the
conservative and have any kind of conservative
Right,
views,
right.
forget it, they don't want to hear it.
And that's a big temptation then for us who have those beliefs to shut up and not say anything. And that is a big temptation. That's why I say I think the social temptation, the world out there is the biggest one today. What's their goal? What's the goal of the devil and the world and our flesh? Yeah, get us to hell. And how do they do that? And this may surprise you. How does sin, okay, falling into sin, okay, we'll say that. So we have temptation, and then the Bible says temptation leads to sin, okay? And so then sin leads to hell. Okay, how? How? Why? Yes.
Because soon you don't believe that God really means what he says.
Okay, that is right. It's not the sin itself. Okay? That cannot happen because of the cross. Okay? Jesus paid for all sins on the cross. And so the cross can't put you, sin can't put you in hell. That's impossible. That cannot happen. But, okay, if the sin, there's another step, okay? If sin leads to unbelief, okay, and impenitence, which is the same thing, okay, unrepentance, okay, and what does unrepentance really mean? It means what Suzanne said. I don't believe what God said. Okay? I don't believe what God said in His Word. And therefore, I am calling God a liar. I am calling Jesus a liar. Now, there is kind of a step, if you will, in there too. I mean, it is possible. There's all kinds of people who believe in evolution, not creation. Okay? And yet they're still believers. In other words, they still accept the Trinity. They still accept Jesus paid for the sins of the world. Okay? They still accept Him as a Savior and Redeemer. Right? But they've been convinced by the world that the world got here by evolution. And there's a lot of those kind of subjects. Okay? So there is a possibility that the impenitence can be kind of unknown. You don't really realize, you don't really understand that what you're doing by believing in evolution is calling God a liar. Because some religious nut has convinced you that Genesis chapters 1 and 2 is symbolic. And so you say, well, I don't deny Genesis 1 and 2 is God's Word. Oh, absolutely, it's God's Word. But what does it mean? It's a symbol of God using evolution to bring about the creation of the world. Okay? Now, you and I will look at Genesis 1 and 2 and we say, well, that's not what it says at all. But again, some people are led to believe, a lot of people, a lot of Christians, are led to believe. Well, a lot of Christians are led to believe that two women can get married, two men can get married, etc. They're led to believe that. Their church leaders tell them, oh, that's okay, that's okay. Oh, that passage in the Bible about men having sex together like the man and woman do and being terrible or something, that's not really what it's talking about. It's not talking about that at all. It's talking about something else, you know. So when the religious leaders and the so-called experts in the Bible, the so-called scholars, come out and they say, well, that's not what you think it is. It means something totally different. And then you go, oh, all right. And you still, like I say, you still accept the other historic teachings of the Bible, the creed, let's say, the Apostles' Creed, Nicene Creed, whatever. Then there's a break here. But it still can happen that eventually you break through that and you just become an unbeliever. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen where people call into question evolution, they call into question marriage, they call into question divorce, they call into question one thing after another, and pretty soon, over a good period of time, eventually, the whole thing's a myth and a fable, and there's no such thing as God, or if he or she exists, this is all just a big game, and yada, 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 and then they become, from impenitence, they actually become actual unbelievers. Yeah. So and you're never, unfortunately for us, we can't read hearts, we can't read minds, and so a lot of times we don't know exactly where they're at. Are they to that point where they're an actual unbeliever or not? Sometimes it's hard to tell. Sometimes it's easy to tell, but a lot of times it's hard to tell. And so we have to be careful sometimes when we're dealing with these people and don't just assume that they're a bunch of unbelievers. Sometimes they could be believers, but very, very weak in their understanding. Okay?
I know there was one tried to convince me once. He said, like, God, if he would have known what scientists would find out and we'd end up with the atomic bomb, he would have stopped it.
Oh, yeah.
He wouldn't have let him invent. Yeah, you went that far.
Yeah.
Man, he's so far.
Yeah.
out, it's unbelievable.
What is the best way to fight against these enemies of our faith?
True.
Prayer. Is that the best? I would say any one of the means of grace would certainly be top dog, but which one in particular? What is the best weapon? What weapon did Jesus use? He used the word. God said, do not tempt the Lord your God, etc., etc. I mean, even the devil used God's word, and Jesus used it right back at him. Okay? So I would say the answer to the first question there, what is the best way? The answer to that question is God's word, the Bible. That's the answer to that. Now, the next question, what powerful weapon does God give us to aid us? Now I would say prayer. So you always have to remember something, folks, and we talked about this at the very beginning of the Lord's Prayer. Prayer is not a means of grace. Prayer is not a way to receive God's grace. Prayer is an expression of faith. Okay? And by expressing that faith, that's one of the ways we grow in faith. And of course, God answers our prayers. So prayer is a secondary tool. Primary tool is this. And I would include any of the other means of grace too. I would say remember your baptism. Remember you are a baptized child of God, which means you are a member of God's family. Remember your Lord's Supper, or even go and get the Lord's Supper. Call a pastor up and say, hey, I'd like Lord's Supper. I'm feeling weak. Okay? Used to do that in the old days. That was common, especially in the days when Lord's Supper was 2, 3 times, 4 times a year in church. People, when they had a need for it, they would say so. They don't speak up too much anymore, which is why I think it needs to be every week. So prayer is an aid. Will we win every battle in this war? Why or why not? No, we won't win every battle. As a matter of fact, we'll be lucky if we win the majority. Matter of fact, we'll be lucky if we win a good minority. That's just a fact, okay? Because our old Adam is very powerful. Our old Adam is got us by the hair. The world also is very powerful. It gives us a great deal of fear. We especially fear to be disliked. We fear especially to be disliked by our families, our children, okay? Our brothers and sisters. We have a fear of being disliked by our neighbors, our co-workers. We have a fear of being disliked in general by the world out there. We have a fear of being ostracized, of nobody talking to us because of our beliefs and so on and so forth. So that's very powerful. That's very, very powerful. And it's hard to win against that. It's very hard to win against that. Right? And maybe we can do it from a distance. We can do it in our emails, you know. We can do it in our texts. But then when they're sitting right down to us at Thanksgiving dinner, you know, it's like my wife will say to me every once in a while, we have people over, and my wife will say, "Now don't start an argument." And I always say, "Honey, I don't start the arguments. I just finish them." "Yeah, well, normally you finish them by people slamming the door and leaving the house." I said, "Sorry. That's the way it is." Okay? So yeah. Of what result, however, can we be supremely confident? Yeah, we're going to win in the end. We'll be hailed as victors on our way to heaven, and all of our opponents will, maybe not all of them, but they all will see the error of their ways, and some of them will do so forever in hell. All right. Questions at all on lesson 30 of the sixth petition? So let's talk about evil, okay, a little bit. And so a seventh petition talks about evil. And Bible verses, I've got a slew of Bible verses here for you. Let's look at those. In Job, and you remember the story of Job, of course. And from 6 troubles God will deliver you, even in 7 evil will not touch you. In Psalm 91, we have no evil will befall you, nor will any plague come near your tent. Psalm 121, the Lord will protect you from all evil. He will keep your soul. The Lord will guard your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. Now, what kind of evil can this not mean? Yeah, certainly any day, everyday pains, problems, and so on. Certainly cannot mean that. How do we know that? Why do we know that that's the truth? That cannot be what those passages are talking about. Yes, because a lot of believers, including Jesus himself, the ultimate believer, experienced what? Experienced pain, experienced anxiety, experienced hunger, experienced sleeplessness, you name it, okay? I'm sure he got splinters when he was building stuff in his father's shop, and so on and so forth. Right? So it can't mean that. And you'd be surprised the number of people that find this, that don't understand this, that point to these passages and call God a liar. Look at these passages, they'll say. Look at these passages, and then believers get killed in a tornado. Good church people. Maybe an entire church gets leveled with all the people in it. okay, by a tornado or something. Look at that. How can you believe in a God like that? Okay. Oh, because that's not what God's talking about, you dummy. Now, does it sometimes include those things? Sure. There are lots of times where believers don't suffer bad things happening to them when they probably should have. Not too long ago, I read a story about a guy who fell out of an airplane, fooling around. Fell out of an airplane, I don't know, 20,000 feet, whatever it was. Fell all the way, landed on something, I forget what it was exactly, but survived. Lived to tell the tale. Okay? He should have died, but he didn't. Okay? Have you seen these people that wear the flying suits and swoop down the cliffs and the mountains and everything? Every once in a while, smack, you know. I suppose they just moved their pinky a little bit and went the wrong way, you know, because they're going pretty fast, you know. But, you know, I always look at those things and I think every single one of them should be flat as a pancake. I mean, you jump off of a cliff, you know, 1,000 feet in the air, you deserve to be smooshed. But they do, they go around like birds, you know, and pretty soon they parachute down, you know. But, you know, they probably should die and get evil on them, but they don't, you know. All kinds of examples where people, you know, I use the example, a lot of times use the example of George Washington, how many times his coat was shot through. And nobody could figure out how come he didn't get shot. He was wounded, not once, not even wounded. It's always kind of funny that the fact that his head is on the Purple Heart, he never got wounded. You ever notice that? That's kind of odd. Yeah. The portrait on the Purple Heart is George Washington because he started the award or whatever you want to call it. What did my dad always say? You do not win the Purple Heart. How did he say it? You do not win it. You don't earn it.
Try to get it.
You're unlucky enough to get it or something. I forget how he put it, but
You have to survive.
survive it. Yeah, yeah. You got to wound it. You got to get wounded. Although I will have to admit that in listening to people over the years, you know, I'd say to somebody, you know, I see you got a Purple Heart or you got a license plate, and I said, so how'd that happen? And I had my wisdom teeth pulled out, in, you know, in a war zone.
Or did you have, but for the grace of God, go on.
Right. Yeah. Nick, let's look at the other passages now. Matthew, do not fear those who kill the body, but unable to kill the soul, but rather fear him, that is God, who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And the word destroy here does not mean annihilate, does not mean turn into nothing. It means to incinerate when you've got ashes left. It means to destroy as far as its function is concerned, right? So do not fear those who kill the body, but unable to kill the soul. So this would include who? The devil. Now, we should fear the devil as far as him leading us to unbelief, yes. But we should not fear the devil when it comes to physical harm, because that's all he can do. God allows him certain latitude, depending on who we are and what God's purpose is, but God allows the devil certain latitude to inflict certain bodily, physical, worldly afflictions. Okay, that's true. But cannot touch the soul. The soul is God's purview. That is God's authority. That's God's territory. God decides who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. And so when God sends somebody to hell because of their unbelief, all right, then they are technically destroyed. That is, their ability to praise and worship God in heaven is gone. You are of your father the devil, Jesus said, and he's talking to the Pharisees here, you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning, does not stand in the truth because there's no truth in him. Whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. And we ought to assume that. Whenever we get a idea in our heads that goes contrary to God's word, we ought to assume that the devil has a hand in it. Even if it's coming from our old nature and our lust and our greed, but devil's got a hand in it. And because the devil's got a hand in it, and because it contradicts God's word, it's a lie. We ought to just assume that. And I'm afraid people don't do that. People often get the idea in their head, oh, well, God's word really doesn't mean what it says there. It means something else. And they think that's from their own heads. They think that, well, I just meditated on it a long time. I just gave it a lot of thought. I thought about it better than Luther or some of these other yahoos. And I took a fresh perspective at it and came up with this new idea. Well, you come up with a new idea that clearly contradicts the clear word of God, I can guarantee you that's a lie. It's a lie from Satan.
Preachers that do just exactly that.
You betcha they do. You betcha they do. And they do it because people do it. And therefore, when people hear it, people go, yeah, that's what I think. He agrees with me. Hallelujah. I must be pretty good. Birds of a feather flock together. Strengthening the souls of the disciples encouraged them to continue in the faith and saying, through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God. Boy, ain't that the truth. Of course, you're probably familiar with the old translation, we must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom of God. Now that's talking about two different enterings. It's talking about the entering into the kingdom of God of becoming a believer, because God has to change our nature. God has to take a hold of us, take a hold of our hearts, and make it alive. Okay, He's got to rip into us and make us repentant. Okay, make us repentant, make us sorry for our sins. That's hard. That's a lot of tribulation. And then at that point, we may still have, depending on when that happens, we may have 20, 30, 40, 80, 90, 100 years of life yet ahead. So that's the other entering. So we go through that tribulation to enter into heaven. So always remember that there's two enterings here that really is spoken of. Okay? We must through much tribulation enter into the kingdom of God. To be a believer and to get to heaven, both. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I rather boast about my weakness, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. So Paul complained to God. Yes, Paul complained. Paul complained and said, I don't like this. Whatever it was, we don't know. Some people think it was an eye problem of some kind, because he had to write with real big letters. Some people think it was some kind of palsy where his hands, maybe it was like a Parkinson's or something like that. We don't know. Some historians think that he kind of walked with a limp, that he had bad joints or whatever. Other ones think that he had constant headaches. That's why he stayed apart from people so much, and he never had any real good companions or anything like that. He was just kind of a loner. We don't know. We don't know what it was, but he says he prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for God to take it away. And God actually spoke to him and said, no. I want you to have that. I want you to have that in terms, he said, my grace is sufficient for you. In other words, my spiritual love for you, my mercy in saving your sorry rear end, that's good enough. If I take away what Paul called the thorn in my flesh, if I take away that thorn in your flesh, you might get a big head. If I take away that thorn in the flesh, you might not be hitting your knees as often as you do and praying to me. If I take away that thorn in the flesh, you may not be so energetic to preach the gospel. If I take away that thorn in the flesh, you may not look forward to heaven as much as you do. If I take away that thorn in the flesh, you might not be as good an apostle as you are. Might ruin you completely. So I ain't going to do it. You're stuck with it, buddy, because I know you better than you know yourself, and I know you need that. You need that little thorn, because otherwise you'd get out of hand, and you'd lose your faith and wind up in hell. Now, do you want that? If it's a choice between getting rid of that thorn in the flesh and going to hell, which would you rather have? Grace, I think, huh? Yeah. So that's the idea. And also, if you detract from the messenger somehow, if you make the messenger just a little weak, then what do you have to really focus on? The message. Okay? So the messenger is not the issue. It's the message. And so sometimes God makes the messenger frail. He makes the messenger a little maybe not so brilliant. Huh? He makes the messenger have some issues, have some problems or whatever, so that more focus can be on the message itself. I know, folks, I know. I'm a lousy audience. I am a terrible audience. The very few times in the last 40 years that I've gone to church to sit in a pew, boy, I tell you, it takes everything out of me right there. I am exhausted. Because I want to jump up every 5 seconds and say, no, don't say it that way. What's the matter with you, idiot? I'm terrible. I really am. I'm absolutely terrible. And especially if it's one of these white knuckle guys, right? Good morning, everybody. How are you? Today I'm going to preach on the sword of the Lord. Okay? And I just, I'm no different than the rest of you. Okay? I'm no different. I sit there, and if it's somebody who can't get 4 words out without stumbling around themselves and hemming and hawing and beating around the bush, or somebody that preaches 45 minutes and never says anything, I just, oh man, get me out of here. God, just shoot me. Right? I know what it is. But I'll be the first to defend that guy. I'll be the first to say, it's the message, not the messenger. And I'll be the first to say, that's my old Adam that's acting up. That's my old Adam that's rolling his eyes. That's my old Adam that's slapping my face. That's my old Adam that's thinking, oh, what an idiot. Okay? Because it's the message, not the messenger. It's very important. Okay? Very important. 2 Thessalonians, but the Lord is faithful, and he will strengthen and protect you from the evil one. Now, there's the key. There's the key. God will protect you from the evil one. Okay? The devil. And what goes along with the devil, which is hell, damnation, etc. So this is really the key. This is what this petition is talking about. This is what this concept is talking about. And even though earthly pain or earthly evil, earthly trouble is often included, it's not exclusive. This is exclusive. No matter what God does, he works hard to save you from the devil. Let me ask you, did you get a chance to look at that email that I sent you? Mm-hmm. Okay, what was that term? Uber, not Uber, started with a U. For evil? The thing, my question was, it was capitalized.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering why it was capitalized. Is that something that German does once in a while?
I'm not that much of an
Okay,
authority on
all right.
reading.
Art asked me this morning if I could find a version of Luther's Lord's Prayer, actually written by Luther, and I did. I noticed that that word, evil, was capitalized. Now, I don't know if the printer did that, Luther did that. I'm guessing Luther did, but I don't know. Ubel, what was it? I can't remember. But I did notice too that in the ecumenical German version, that is the version that now they use in Germany in both the Protestant churches, the evangelical churches, Lutheran churches, and the Catholic, the Roman churches, all three use the same Lord's Prayer now. And they use a totally different word, starts with a B, bosun, Boser, something like that. They use a totally different word. And the comments that the people were making online were saying that word is kind of a more general word. So I think that I don't know. I'm not an expert, okay? But as I was telling Arb, I said I just went by what my professors told me. And all my professors in seminary, even the ones who didn't teach Greek, they all spoke German. They all spoke German, and they all wrote German. And they all said the same thing. They all said that Luther's intention in his translation was to put across the idea of the evil one. That's what they said. Now, they didn't back it up. I wouldn't be able to question them anyway, but that's what they said. And so I took them at their word. So the evil one. 2 Timothy. The Lord will rescue me from every evil deed and will bring me safely to his heavenly kingdom. Again, that's the key. Evil deed what? Evil deed is talking about heavenly kingdom. That's what. So whatever keeps you out of the heavenly kingdom is what the evil deed is. It's not, again, a splinter or a stub toe or getting a cold or whatever. It's not that's what it's talking about. Hebrews, for those whom the Lord loves, he disciplines, and he scourges every son whom he receives. Now that is super interesting for a couple reasons. Okay, the Lord loves whom the Lord loves, he disciplines. One question I used to always ask my old man after he finished whipping me is. He would always say, this is not punishment, this is discipline. And I always would say, what's the difference? What's the difference? And he would always answer the same way. If it was punishment, I'd still be winging on you. Because you ain't bleeding yet. So, there is a difference. And even if there's not a difference in physical act, there's a difference in intention. Punishment is just that. And we can't be punished because the sins are already paid for. But we can be disciplined. There can be physical consequences or even spiritual consequences or emotional consequences for foolish things that we do against God's will. Right? That still's there. That's there as long as we're on this earth. But the next term is what really gets you. He scourges every son whom he receives. Now, son, the word son there means a child of God. That is, you're a believer. Because only a son inherits the property in those days. Women didn't inherit property. Only sons did. So when the Bible calls you a son, it's not talking about male, female. It's talking about whether or not you're a believer. Okay? But the word that really gets you is scourge. And anybody who read this at that time, before 100 AD, they saw that word scourge, I bet you a shiver run down their spine. Because to be scourged in the Roman Empire was darn near capital punishment all by itself. They'd rip your back to shreds, literally. And I mean, it was nasty. So when it says that God scourges every believer, wow, that's pretty intense. So don't be surprised once in a while if what God allows into your life is pretty tough, pretty harsh. In Revelation, there was a war in heaven, Michael and his angels waging war with the dragon. The dragon and his angels waged war. And they were not strong enough, and there was no longer a place found in heaven, and the great dragon was thrown down, the serpent of old, who is called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. And he was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him, and they are causing all kinds of catastrophe. So, when anybody ever asks you, why is there evil in this world? There's your answer. It's not God. It's not the cause. Yes, he allows a certain amount. But imagine if God was not in control of Satan. Imagine if God had no power over Satan and Satan had total free reign. He was not a junkyard dog at the end of a chain where God could still control him a bit. Okay? He was just free roaming. How much worse would things be? Tons. We wouldn't even recognize it. Yeah, we would. Yeah, we would. Us believers probably wouldn't know. So when people complain, when people do, how can a loving God allow blankety 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 blank, whatever? Your reaction, needs to be, you're lucky. It's only that. We're fortunate. We're blessed with great mercy. Is that's all we have to put up with? Because it could be, and it should be, and it really ought to be a lot worse. The devil had his way. Yeah, believers wouldn't even exist. We'd all be dead, and we'd all be dead in a horrific, terrible way that would strain our faith. Questions on the passages?
He may not be done with the steel yet.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's go to the questions then. Page 40, lesson 31. God keeps most evil away from us so that we maintain our faith in Christ and are saved. What kinds of evil are there? Well, there's physical evil, there's emotional evil, there's mental evil, and in the physical evil, there's all kinds of things that go along with that. There's diseases of the body, and so and so. When we talk about spiritual evil, of course, we're only talking about one thing, and that's unbelief. Unbelief is the only spiritual evil there is. But mental evil, emotional evil, physical evil, you name it. There's all kinds. Who's in control over all evil in the universe? Be careful how you answer this. It sounds like you ought to say the devil. Yeah, he's in control of all the evil in the universe, but he's not.
You never got a lot.
Yeah, God is in final control, even of all the evil. God controls the amount of evil. God controls the kind of evil. God controls where that evil goes and to whom that evil is put upon. The devil can only do whatever evil God allows. That's it. No more. No more. And I know that's hard. That's a tough deal. I know that. I know that's hard. When we, we're sitting down watching TV, we just want to enjoy the TV for a night, and these babies come on with cleft palates and all that, and oh man, we see these little kids with the big bellies, and ribs sticking out, and oh man, oh gee, I mean, it is. I don't get on anybody who is upset by that. I don't. Because you would have to be a cold-hearted stone not to be touched by some of this stuff. It's hard. It is. It's hard to see God allows this, and the only thing you can say is it would be worse. Well, it's already pretty bad. Yeah, but it would be worse if God takes his hands off of it entirely and let the devil have his total sway. Boy, talk about faith, folks. That takes a lot of faith. It does. And don't be surprised that there are Christians, or especially non-Christians, but even Christians with very weak faith who just have a really hard time, even harder than what I'm saying, and will just, push you away and just say, nope, I don't buy it. I've had many members over the years like that, good, faithful people. They'll come up to me after I preach on this subject or whatever, and they'll come up to me and they say, don't you ever tell me that God allows me to get hurt. Don't you ever tell me that God wounds me. Well, the prophet Hosea says that. Prophet Hosea even goes on to say God kills. And the Bible teaches that God is the only one who kills. The devil can't do that. Because why? Because again, God has sovereignty over the soul and the separation of the soul from the body. God's the only one that can do that, can allow that. And so not a single solitary body and soul separates in the history of this planet that God did not allow it or cause it, as the case may be. Yeah. And that's tough, boy. I'm telling you, that's hard. That's hard. You talking to you're talking to a parent, who just buried a 4-year-old child, or you're talking to a widow or a widower that just buried their spouse, or you're talking to, somebody in the military, who just had their best friend blown to pieces. I mean, it's hard. There's no two ways about it. And we should never, ever, ever tell people, oh, you shouldn't worry about it. You shouldn't be bothered. Oh, so-and-so's in heaven now. They are, but you're not. You're not. Okay. And until you are, it's going to be hard for you to look upon that in a positive way. It's going to be hard. It takes a lot, and so, I don't get on people. I don't get on people. I hate this whole, I tell you folks, it's bad. I'm telling you, it's bad. Okay. This whole celebration of life idea, it's popular now, even in our own church body. It talked here in the last Northwestern Lutheran Forward in Christ. It talked about a funeral for a professor, one of our professors in our college, and it said it was a celebration of life. Oh, God. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. Now my people will come and want the same thing. I'm sorry. Death means one thing, folks. It is a consequence, not a punishment. It is a consequence of sin. That's what it is. Yeah. And for us to poo-poo that, and to brush it aside and say, oh, well, that's okay. He was a believer. He's in heaven now. Everything's hunky-dunky. I'm fine. You're fine. Everybody's fine. No, we're not fine. We're not fine. Okay? We have to deal with the loss. Come on. We have to deal with the it's not a I'm sorry, it's not a celebration. Okay? I don't care if they're 25 or 105. It's not a celebration. It's a funeral. Let's say the word funeral. Okay? That's what it is, darn it. It's not a celebration of life. Okay? We're not here to have a good time, darn it. You want to have a good time? Go home, set him up, put a drink in his hand, and have a wake. That's fine. You can go ahead and do that. It won't bother me one bit. Don't come into church here and expect to have a good time. You're not here for a good time. You're here to witness the consequences of sin. You're here to understand that's going to be you laying there or in that bucket one of these days, and you better get your act in gear, and you better get your relationship with Jesus all straightened out. That's why you're here. You're not here to look at a bunch of pictures and watch a movie, okay? And clap your hands and say, oh, what a hallelujah, what a great day this is. No, you're here because somebody paid the consequences of sin. They're dead. That's why you're here. And if you don't get straight with Jesus, you're going to be more than dead. And that's the fact check. Boy, I tell you, it just drives me insane. I'm sorry. I used to enjoy funerals because I got a chance to preach the gospel, and I got a chance to to deal with people when they're vulnerable and weak and crying and with tears and understood the frailty of life. But now, people will come, celebration of life. I want to have a good time. I want some rock and roll music at my funeral. And I just want to scream. Okay? I just want to scream. It drives me insane. Does God do evil? Notice I did not ask, could God do evil? Or can God do evil? I asked, does God do evil? Answer? No, it's impossible. Why? Because his attribute, one of his essential attributes is holiness, perfection, goodness, mercy, peace, joy, righteousness, however you want to put it. He is perfectly holy and incapable of doing evil. Now, I know this makes your brain ache a little bit to cogitate on the fact that God is incapable of something. But he is incapable of evil. Now, as we have demonstrated, if God creates a rock so big that he can't move it, then he is incapable of moving that rock. Why? Because he created that rock so big that he can't move it. Now, don't think on that too much, or it'll start spilling out your ears. But when it comes to evil, he is incapable of that, because he is perfect. It's like a computer, okay? If a computer's got something wrong with it, and it starts to do an equation or something like that, and it comes out wrong, what happens to the computer? It shuts down. It would cease to exist. It cannot function. It cannot come out with a wrong answer. If it starts to come out with a wrong answer, you get the blue screen of death or whatever. It's the same way with God, only more so. God is incapable of anything evil, anything truly bad in the eternal sense. What particular evil is the main concern of this petition? Well, going to hell, of course. And anything that goes along with that, okay? Now, again, we don't know the future. We don't know, we don't have not perfect knowledge. And so we don't know what might destroy our faith. We don't know. We might have a good guess. We might say, yeah, if I win the lottery, I'd probably wind up in hell. If I won $100 million or whatever, it probably wouldn't be good for me. Yeah, we can probably guess that. Okay. But aside from maybe a few things, we really don't know. We don't know what it is going to take to get us into heaven. Whether it's going to take, we have to be healthy for 85 or 95 years, or if we have to be sick for 45 or 55 years. We don't know whether it's going to take, migraines every day for the rest of our life, or amputated leg. We don't know if it's going to take, success at everything we touch as a business person, or one bankruptcy after another. We don't know that. All we can do is do what the hand that's dealt us every day and take what God gives. That's all we can do. We can't do anything else because we don't have perfect knowledge. God has perfect knowledge. And at the end of the day, we should be able to say what Paul said. Okay? My grace is, God told Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. Okay? In other words, suck it up. Be thankful you're going to heaven and leave it at that. Just leave it alone. Okay? Just leave it alone. Okay? You don't have a perfect house? Tough. Your car needs a little work? Okay. Hey, your wife or your husband isn't exactly the cream of the crop, the top dog? Well, too bad. That's the way it goes. You win some, you lose some, and some get rained out. All right? You suck it up and you deal with it. And you just say, well, thank you, God, for the good things you give me. Give me patience with the bad things you give me, and good night. That's how you do it. That's how you do it, folks. And get up the next day and put one foot in front of the other and do the thing all over again. Somebody told me not too long ago. Somebody said, Pastor, I'm really getting tired of life. And I said, why is that? It's because every day it's the same darn thing. And I said, well, there is an alternative to that, you know. You can just not wake up. Oh, that would be nice. Well, it's not in my charge. I don't have the button on that one. Okay? Probably is a real good thing I don't. Because there's some people in this world. I would like to get rid of a bunch of folks if I could, if I had the right. Oh man, I tell you. Okay, so
You qualify that with, if it's right.
yeah. In what ways are various afflictions not really evil? Well, they're not really evil, obviously, when they lead to stronger faith. They're not really evil when they bring us to God in prayer. They're not evil when they cause us to search the Scriptures, and so on and so forth. They're not evil when they cause us maybe to lean on somebody. Okay? Maybe we're the kind of person who, I don't need anybody by jingle. And that's not a good way to go through life. It's important once in a while to give somebody the opportunity to help you. You know? That's a good thing. That's a blessed thing. And maybe God wants you to lean on somebody every once in a while. Nothing wrong with that. Okay? Yeah.
You know, I tell my wife that at least once a day, you know, we had a few struggles on the way. I said, I never dreamed I'd have it this good. I don't know what's going to happen when the other shoes fall.
You ever had the other shoe falls? Yeah. Yeah.
I never dreamed I'd have it
You
this good.
don't mind going barefoot, right? Yeah, right. In general terms, how does the Bible describe the life of a believer? In general terms. Hush puppies and peach pie,
But you have hope.
sweet tea and rhubarb. Huh?
You have hope.
You have hope, yeah.
Right.
So I would say trial with hope.
An unbeliever has no hope.
No
whether
hope.
he knows it or not.
Yeah. But the life of a believer is one of trial. With the guarantee, I would even say. I would even say stronger than hope. The guarantee of mansion in heaven.
I say something when you get time yet.
Go ahead.
We had a preacher one time that said, why you guys run around with a long face? You're going to heaven.
As I like to say, we are people who have 1 foot in heaven, 1 foot on the ground, and a queasy feeling in the pit of our stomach. That's the fact, Jack, right there. That's the truth. So, but again, you know, the warm and fuzzies, yeah, they happen. And when they happen, hallelujah. You know, think of the life of a believer. I mean, we're thinking about ourselves, obviously, today, and the things that we have today. But imagine the life of a believer, say, in Jesus' day. You ever think about that? Imagine the life of a believer in Jesus' day. Okay? First of all, well, I don't know if this is good or bad necessarily, but you only lived probably 50 years. If you hit 60, you were old. Okay? People around the village would say, man, look at the old guy. Okay? Most people, 45, 50 years old, that was about all. That was it. That's all they could exist. Women a little bit more, but men 45 to 50 years old. That's the first thing. Second thing, you had a very short childhood. Your childhood really was your weaning time, you know, up to your weaning time. When you were weaned, which was either 2, 3, or 4, kind of depended a little bit on the tribe or the culture or the village, or whether you were out in the rural area or in town or whatever. But by the time you were off your mother's breasts, okay, your life started to get tough, because then you started to be given chores. So you had that 2, 3, 4 years. That was your childhood. And then let's just say 4 for sake of argument, and say starting at 5, you'd be going to fetch water. You'd be helping to shovel out the animals' pens, doing stuff like that. 6 or 7, around 6 or 7, you'd go to Hebrew school. We're talking about Israelites, of course. Go to Hebrew school, and you stay in Hebrew school for about 5 years. And Hebrew school was tough. And if you didn't learn your Hebrew, man, you got swatted and you beat, and oh man, they'd tar you good, right? And during that whole time, you're also learning a trade. And you're learning how to build chairs like Jesus did, or you're learning how to farm, or you're learning how to be a stonemason or a bricklayer, or you're learning, you're learning a trade of some kind. Imagine that, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Okay? Time you get to be 13, you're bar mitzvahed. You can now come into the synagogue and sit with the men. You can't speak or anything, but you can sit with the men. And in a few years, you can, by 16 or so, you can read the lessons. And also, then you're finishing off your time, your apprenticeship, and you're expected to now earn your keep. And you're going to earn your keep, or you're not going to be in that house. Imagine that at 14, 15, 16 years old. Okay? And so you're working 12 hours a day. And it's a hard life. It's a hard life. You're lucky to get enough water. Your meals, you have 2 meals a day, that's it. And they're both about the same. 360, well, let's just say 360. Let's say 360 days out of the year, your meals are the same. It's a handful of salt and a chunk of bread. That's the morning, that's breakfast. No lunch. Okay, maybe a tankard of water, if you can find it, or a wine, more likely. And then for dinner, another handful of salt, another chunk of bread, and now you might get some dried fish. Bones and all. Yeah, bones and all. Okay? Eat it or don't. Don't. If you saw a green vegetable every once in a while, you'd be really lucky. You must be a farmer. Olives, meat like lamb or anything like that, 2 or 3 times a year, maybe. Wedding, yeah. You'd see it at a wedding. You'd see it at a bar mitzvah. You'd see it at an engagement, a betrothal. But that's about it. So you would have, besides the religious festivals, you might have 4, 5, 6 days a year off. That's it, besides the Sabbath. But Sabbath, it's not, it's off, but you can't do anything. You can't go anywhere. But yeah, that's your life. And that's your life, like I said, 360 days out of the year. Year after year after year after year after year after year. Okay? No conveniences. No running water, no spigots to go, no commodes, no toilet paper, no electricity, no paper towels, no plates, no forks. Do you know forks were not even invented till the Middle Ages? We're talking like 12, 13, 1400 AD. No forks. Wooden spoons. And pretty harsh wooden spoons too, the kind that make the hair stand up on your arms, like they get with the ice cream, those little things. Okay? Your life is miserable. Really. That's it. And then you die. And they put you in a shallow grave and put a bunch of stones on top of you. And then after a year, they come back and get your bones out and put them in a box and put them on the shelf. And use your grave for Uncle Harry or Aunt Martha. And then do the same to them. That's life, folks. So, yeah. Doesn't it? In what ways will this actually comfort us in our troubles? Well, it should cause us to look upon our troubles as what? 2 things. 2 big things. Look upon our troubles, first of all, as
consequences of sin.
Okay, consequences of sin, well, make it 3 then. I don't know that that's going to comfort us much. I'm talking comfort, 2 comforts. 2 comforts. First, yeah, we're going to heaven. We're going to heaven. Okay, and maybe that's second, but still, that's one of them. We're going to heaven. What's the first one though? Even before we realize we're going to heaven. They would be, and they could be, and they should be a lot worse. And that's the first thing. That should really comfort us. Okay? It should really comfort us that they're not that worse than they are. Okay? And meant for our good, of course. And that's kind of all wrapped up in the same thing, but you get my drift, get my point, that these troubles are not as bad as we think they are. They're actually good for us. That's comfort number 1. And comfort number 2, they won't last forever. Eventually, we go to heaven and we won't have them. We won't have to worry about them no more. So those are 2 great comforts that I think we ought to repeat to ourselves all the time. When will all of our troubles end? Of course, when our life ends on this earth. Yep. When will all evil end? At least as far as we are concerned. I don't know exactly why I put that last part there. I don't know what I was thinking of. But I would say Judgment Day. And I guess what I'm thinking of is we won't have our bodies. Is that evil? I don't know if it's evil, but it's certainly a consequence of sin. Yeah. Separation of body and soul is a consequence, and that consequence will be with us even in heaven, even though it won't bother us. It won't make us any less joyful or whatever for that, whatever span that is. We don't know because there's no time in heaven, so we don't know how long that will last. All right, we got 15 whole minutes. We may be able to get through the passages anyway. Questions on 31? Yes, ma'am. Is there old age in heaven? We don't know. The Bible talks about there being all kinds of people. Now, and it talks about that in 2 ways. It talks about that as being tribes and languages and cultures and all that. Okay, so we think of Indians, Africans, Native Americans, whites, blacks, whatever. Okay, so we think of that. But it also talks about the great and the small. Now, the Greek is not clear as to what that means. And different commentators have taken it different ways. Some commentators see that as meaning the rich and the poor. I mean, they won't be rich and poor in heaven, but the rich and the poor both get there. Because some people teach that the rich don't get there at all. Okay? So the great and the small, some people say great and small as far as society is concerned. Important people and not so important people. The little people and the big fancy, factory owners and all that, bankers and that kind of stuff. So it could mean that. It could also mean the great and the small, meaning old and young. Some commentators believe that with a few exceptions, the people in heaven will be of different statures, if you might say, that there will be a very narrow range of age, if you will. So let's say between 20 and 40. And that those who died very young, as infants, or stillborn even, okay, miscarriages, will look 20-ish. And those that died at 105 or 110 or 15 will look 40-ish. And that's what the Bible means, some say, by great and small. I don't know. I've never read anybody that thought it meant tall and short. That's kind of obvious. Maybe it's too obvious. Everybody overlooks it. I don't know. We can't say. Certainly the infirmities of age will not be there. So even if we looked 200 years old, we wouldn't feel 200 years old. So we just don't have enough information to go on. Yeah.
Mother always said, I'll be glad when I get to heaven, I won't have all these aches and pains.
Yeah, aches and pains. Yeah, right. And pushing my glasses up all the time. Yeah. I agree. You know, that's whether we'll be aged in any way, shape, or form is impossible to say. I just can't say. It's interesting that the people, the apostles, Peter, James, and John, when they talked about Elijah and Moses coming back from heaven. Okay. Now we assume, some assume, many assume, that Moses' body was taken by God after his burial, because in the book of Jude it talks about Christ, the angel of the Lord Christ, fighting with Satan over Moses' body. And obviously we assume, or I think rightfully so, that Jesus won. All right? And if Jesus won, what did he do? Well, we again assume, I think rightfully so, that he would take Moses' body to heaven and reunite Moses' body and soul, so that Elijah and Moses would both have body and soul both in heaven, along with Enoch. Okay? But when Peter, James, and John describe Moses and Enoch, it's interesting, they don't say a whole lot about what they look like. And they don't say how Moses existing 1,500 years before Christ, and Elijah existing at least 500 years before Christ, and there to be no photography of any kind, or statues or pictures of either one of these guys, how in the world did Peter, James, and John know, first, that they were Moses and Elijah, and second, which was which? We don't know. Now, even the very earliest icons, the very earliest paintings, still less than 100 years after the event, that were done in the New Testament time, put these guys with long gray beards. We don't know why. Is that how they showed up, with long gray beards? And how would you know if one was Moses and one was Elijah, or who they were? Yeah, name tags. Hi, I'm Moses. Yeah, we really don't have any idea. Okay. No,
I would assume that Jesus just in their mind.
well, yeah, that's also possible, sure. Bible verses. Yours, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty. Indeed, everything that is in heavens and earth, yours is the dominion, O Lord, and you exalt yourself as head over all. Okay. That's a doxology. From the Greek, dox, meaning glory. Okay. So anything that ascribes glory to God is a doxology. Proverbs 15. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayers of the upright is his delight. The Lord is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayer of the righteous. So God hears our prayer and is delighted with them. Okay? And why? Well, because we are praising him and honoring him. In that day you will not question me about anything. Truly, truly, I say to you, if you ask the Father for anything in my name, he will give it to you. And of course, what does in my name mean? In my name means according to my will. Now, we can sometimes ask things that are not according to God's will, but we don't know that because we don't know God's will perfectly. So sometimes the things we ask for, God will just say, you dummy, you're not supposed to ask for that. I can't give you that. What's the matter with you?
Say God's will be done.
Yeah, right. That's the whole point, right. 2 Corinthians. For as many as are the promises of God, in him they are yes. Therefore, also through him is our amen to the glory of God through us. So we ought to say amen. Amen's a good word. I have to laugh at these presumptuous arrogant pipsqueaks who all of a sudden decided someday, back when, oh, we're not going to put amens on our hymns. What are the hymns? The hymns are prayers. 99% of them anyway. And these arrogant, blasphemous jerks, well, we know better than everybody else, so we're not going to put amens on there. Bunch of idiots. Talk about majoring in minors. I mean, really. This amazes me sometimes, these people, how stupid they are.
Without the amen at the end of the hymn, I don't feel that we.
Yeah, we ain't done yet. I know. I agree. To him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus to all generations forever and ever. Amen. Here's another kind of a doxology. Okay, another ending on a worship. It was very common. It was very normal in the church. And all of them end with amen. Hello. Good grief. Now to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only God, to honor and glory forever and ever. Amen. Okay. Doesn't bother me. Every once in a while, old Rita, would pipe up with an amen. Never bothered me one bit. We had a couple weeks ago that was here that amened a few times. You're not going to offend me. See? Puts me off my timing just a touch bit, but that's okay. I can deal with it. Behold, he is coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, even those who pierced him, and all the tribes of the earth will mourn over him. So it is to be. Amen. The doxology is fine. Now, is the doxology part of what Jesus taught? No. No. When he taught the Lord's Prayer, he did not teach the doxology. Why was it added? It was added because of these passages. These passages are very common in the New Testament. And so when the Gospels were written down and put together with the epistles, people just felt it needed a little something. Is it unscriptural? No. Is it unbiblical? No. Is it theologically wrong? No. Is it heretically? No. It's just fine. Was it part of the original text? Probably. When Mark or Luke and Matthew and those guys wrote the Lord's Prayer out, I don't think it's not in John if I remember correctly, but when they wrote it out, I'm sure they probably added that. And if they didn't add it, I'm the first or second guy to copy it probably added it. So it's no harm done. No harm, no foul, as they say. See? So if somebody wants to leave it off, that's fine. If you want to say, well, how did Jesus pray it? Jesus probably prayed it without the doxology. Probably, most likely. So, that's the question. If you want to know the way Jesus actually said it, spoke it the first time. Well, as a matter of fact, he didn't speak it in Greek, he spoke it in Aramaic. He didn't even speak it in English. I guess we want to really be accurate, we should all learn a little Aramaic. So, what? The doxology was added very early, and the doxology is part of most of the texts that we have. And Luther included it in his catechism, and it was included in the Book of Common Prayer, and so on and so forth, and it's been included in most Lord's Prayers since then. And Vatican II, of course, took it out because it wanted to be modern and different. So in most Roman churches nowadays, you won't find it anymore. And in some Protestant churches too, for that matter. But it has good history behind it, folks, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. Well, we really don't have time to get to the questions, so we'll do the questions first on 32, and then we'll go into the means of grace. Make a note for myself here. Any further questions or comments? Let's close. Well, we don't do that here. That's right. You're excused.
Hey, Pastor,
Yo.
what is that synod believe? Do you know?
Else, is that C?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Missouri.
it's in Missouri, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. See, and then why don't we sing the hymns in our hymns?
What does what?